Sri Lanka, Namo, 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 Mata. Sundarasi Karini, Surani Akisumana Lanka. Kaya Kaya Dikamal Palatu, Sri Lanka, Namo, Namo, apa Shanti, apa ada Bulan Bhakti, apa Anuge, apa Anukari, apa Jivan de, apa Mukti Avade. Navajivan Devine, Nitina Apapurukam Mata. Jnana Pira Vadana Milana Gilana, Nana Jaya Bhumikana. Vikamada Kagedamu Kela Devina, Yamu Yamu Vinopana. Sri Lanka, Namo, Namo, Namo,
Thank you. You may now take your seat. A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to Cambridge in Sri Lanka, leading the future, one of the milestone events of Cambridge Legacy in Sri Lanka. Let me introduce myself. My name is Ashim Singh and I will be your host this morning. Now, talking about Cambridge, Cambridge University Press and Assessment is a part of University of Cambridge. With more than 800 years of resilient and prestigious heritage, preparing nearly 1 million learners at any given time across 160 countries and 10,000 schools. Ladies and gentlemen, here in Sri Lanka, Cambridge works with over 100 schools and more than 250 English centers, giving learners the knowledge, skills, and confidence to thrive tomorrow's world. Now, talking about Cambridge here in Sri Lanka, we all know that it has been here in Sri Lanka for many, many years. But just like me, I wonder whether you also noticed that Cambridge has started making headlines, becoming more prominent over the past few months. The growth, the energy, the dedication of Cambridge towards the Sri Lankan educational, corporate, and institutional stakeholders has been significantly increased. And this event today is dedicated to marking that remarkable era of Cambridge in Sri Lanka with a commitment to excellence unlike ever before. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we commence this ceremony, let's put our hands together for Cambridge in Sri Lanka leading the future. And on that note, talking about today's session, you will hear from the Cambridge's leadership, global, regional, and local, and also from a distinguished inviting, and you will also witness two amazing panel discussions. And now, to open this morning's proceedings, to welcome all of you officially, I cordially invite Arun Rajamani, and introducing him, with 2 decades of experience in education and training, Arun has been instrumental in positioning Cambridge as a leader with a comprehensive suite of curriculum, learning, assessment, and research solutions. Leading the South Asian region with a resilient team, Arun is dedicated to the mission of transforming societies across South Asia through education. Known for his strategic vision and belief in building strong, values driven teams, Arun also has held senior leadership roles at Microsoft, Pluralsight, and HCL, consistently driving growth and meaningful impact in the education sector. Please put your hands together, ladies and gentlemen, as I now cordially invite Mr. Arun Rajamani, Managing Director, South Asia, Cambridge University Press and Assistant.
Thank you very much. That was a wonderful introduction. I'm not sure so much. Good morning, everyone. Vanakkam, salam alaikum. It's a pleasure to be here today. Um, I lead the mission of our university to look at transforming societies through education in our core markets of Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Maldives, Nepal, Bhutan, and lastly India. We oversee the needs of learners, not just in schools, but also in the area of higher education, the area of skill development, the areas of English language education, and we also work with governments in helping them in their transformation priorities as they look into reform education to get their students and their learners ready for a better future. I'm really privileged to be back here in this country. I first visited Sri Lanka in 1981. And ever since then, I've been coming here very, very often, including some of the most difficult periods this country has gone through in the late 80s and 90s. But every time I come here, I'm struck by something. Country, how beautiful this country is, how resilient its people are, how positive these people are, and just how nice it is to be back in Sri Lanka to talk to people. There's a lot that the rest of the countries from South Asia can learn from Sri Lanka and its people. I think it just remains to be back here. This visit of ours is particularly special because as we think about Cambridge and Sri Lanka and the way forward, there are a lot of special announcements for us to make today, which I'll go so shortly. So it is my honor to welcome all of you here, and as part of the welcome proceedings, first and foremost, I'd like to welcome all the dignitaries here today, the leaders from schools who not only represent Cambridge education, but also from schools that are affiliated to other international boards, schools that are affiliated to the national curriculum as well. We have bodies as well as professional bodies. A warm welcome to all of you. Today is a working day. Your schools must be active, your higher education institutions must be working, and it's simply not easy for you all to take time off to be here for 2 hours with us. But I can assure you, the content and the agenda that we have today will be compelling enough for you to realize that this 2 hours that you're going to spend with us, hopefully, will be well worth it. I'd like to welcome His Excellency Andrew Patrick today, who's taken time off from his busy schedule to be with us. We had a chance to meet with him yesterday at his office, and we were struck by how passionate he is about the cause of education and more so about British education continue to in Sri Lanka. So we look forward to hearing his address today. Thank you for being here, sir. I'd also like to welcome Mr. Orlando Edward from British Council, who's here. The British Council has been one of our strongest partners anywhere in the world for many, many decades, driving the cause of education outcomes. We're grateful for the partnership with British Council in Sri Lanka and for the work that British Council has been doing here. We have two panel discussions today, one in the area of English language education and the other in the area of future of learning in schools. And there's several eminent panelists that are here to share their views with us. So also welcome them to this event. And finally, I think we have members of the media here, over 70, I'm told. A warm welcome to members of the media, and hopefully we'll have all of you share some bites with the media as well. So thank you for being here. So finally, I'd like to also welcome my colleagues from Cambridge here. I can just request all of them to stand up. Zahra Ansari, there she is at the back. When you saw the first slide about Cambridge's progress in the last few months, I'm sure all of you will agree that under her leadership today, we've made significant progress in the way we support schools. So big shout out to Zahra. Dinesh Sharma, our head for education, international education for South Asia. Geeta Kumararaja, who takes care of our resources, who right at the back. Dhananjay, who is here from our marketing team. Hand up. Anuradha Jha from our marketing team in India. And also a very special welcome to Sarwat Reza, newly appointed country manager for Bangladesh. And she's flown all the way from Lanka to be able to apply. So thank you. So with those notes of welcome, just to set context for today's event, as the title suggests, it's about Cambridge and Sri Lanka and looking at charting the future forward with all of you. And I think on this note, as we amplify our presence in Sri Lanka, I'm thrilled with the first announcement today to make that we are now formally registering our entity in Sri Lanka. And we've just submitted our papers to the government and we're following through the process of registration. While this might just appear to be a registration of an entity, what it means to all of you is that we will have more colleagues here in Sri Lanka to support you better, to support the cause of British Council better. We will have the ability to localize our offerings a lot more. We will have the ability to transact in local currency, and we'll have the ability to ensure that we are able to provide for more accessible and affordable education eventually to learners. I think that's the big area that signals our commitment to Sri Lanka for the long term. And it's from a Cambridge perspective, while it's taken us 2 years to get here, this is really something that we value a lot in terms of how we look at this market as a very, very key strategic area for us to invest in. Second, I think this would be the theme that you would hear through the conference today, this morning, is how do we prepare our learners for a better future? I'm sure all of you will agree today that we are living in an extremely, extremely uncertain and unpredictable world. The geopolitics has become center stage. There's more war that's going on than what we saw a decade ago. We see disruption happening in the technology space that's perhaps coming back and relooking into the requirement of skills and employability in a very big way. And how does our education system cope with these changes? How do we ensure that the students that we have in our education systems are better prepared to deal with these uncertainties in the future? And these are changes that we've been seeing for decades now. What's new about technology disruption? It is AI today, it is automation in the past, it's something else before that. But I think one thing all of us will agree is that the rate at which these disruptions are happening are a lot more faster and sooner than what we've been seeing in the past. So for us, we can't create our students to deal with computers any longer, but to make sure that they get the resilience, the ability to do critical thinking, the skills that they can use to apply in the job and to problem solve any uncertainty that might be seen in the future. That's what our education system needs to sort of step up to. I think on this note, I'd like to really welcome Rod Smith, who's our Global Managing Director for International Education. Rod, if I may request you to stand up. And before I get Rod on stage, Rod is visiting Sri Lanka. I'm going to steal his thunder a bit. Rod is visiting Sri Lanka after 42 years. He came here as part of a visiting schools cricket team. And I'm sure he's not going to admit it, but the Sri Lankan team beat them fair and square in cricket. But he's been championing the cause of education transformation for over 3 decades now. And not just that, in Cambridge, in international education, he's been really driving the focus around how we should get ready for a better future. And that's the theme of the conference today. So on this note, Rod, if I may request you to please come on stage to share your views. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Yes, Aaron has slightly stolen my thunder, but first of all, I just want to, before we, oh, there we go. That wasn't planned, by the way. So, no, I just want to say, first of all, I'm absolutely thrilled to be here today. I look out here, and it is an amazing sight to see so many people from our community here in Lanka joining us today. I look out, I see hundreds of people out there. This takes me back to my wedding. The only difference being is that you've chosen to be here. So thank you very much indeed. You weren't forced to come to it. So thank you for coming here today. As Aaron says, this is not my first time to Sri Lanka, but the last time was some time ago, back in 1981. Now that is the time when I came. I was 19 years old, and I came over on a cricket tour with my school. And we toured Sri Lanka. We didn't do this, as Aaron said, we actually won 3 streets. So a nice honourable, a nice one. Also, that was a win, trust me, but nevertheless, 3-3. Now, this photo was taken at St. Servatius School in Malta. We're from Malta here today, but that's where that was. And you may notice that I am in that photo. Now, you may be surprised to know that I am in this photo. I am the lad there on the end, the very, very first person in that line. It's extraordinary, isn't it? What you will have noticed, and this is very much a theme of today, that whilst a lot of things have stayed the same, why a lot of foundational things about education stay the same, a lot of changes. In that photo, I was skinny. I had hair. But let me assure you, ladies and gentlemen, that is me. And back in 1981, it was an amazing country. And it does kind of worry a bit, the life kind of goes, life passes quite quickly. I can't believe it's so long since I was here. But let me absolutely assure you that it's not going to be 42 years to come back again. I think that would be quite extraordinary if I did, if you think about it from where I am now. But actually, this is an incredibly important place for us to be doing a lot more, and for me to be visiting a lot more. We have an amazing community here in Sri Lanka. We have 60, 70, 80 schools. We do a lot of work, obviously, around English. We're talking to the government around reform, but actually, there's a lot more that we want to do, because actually, the community having is vibrant, but we think that we want to build it to be bigger, much more supportive, much more focused on the specific needs of Sri Lanka. Interestingly, the situation of the profile that we have here is different in many ways from many other countries around the world. As part of the Cambridge Schools community, you are part of a community of over 10,000 schools around the world that do the Cambridge curriculum. 3 million students, 150 countries around the world. And one of the things I want to talk to you a little bit about today is what the strength is in being part of the community. A community that can really think about what we need to do by way of education, how we need to adapt and respond to the changes that Aaron prefaced. So actually our determination here in Sri Lanka is to build this community even bigger. In South Asia alone, we have over 1,000 schools now teaching the Cambridge curriculum. And we want that number to increase, and we want that number to increase significantly in Sri Lanka, not because it's for Cambridge, but because as a community we can do a lot more together. And for that reason, as Aaron mentioned, we're making some really significant changes here to the way we're working with you. So yes, as Aaron said, and we are opening our business here, so that we can actually invest much more here in terms of building our team. Sahara is the first of our most recent appointments. She's building an amazing team here in Sri Lanka to support you even better. It means that we will be able to work much closer with the government here, with you as schools and the community of Cambridge schools. And this is a very, very significant development for us. Early years, there's no more important year in education in terms of impact than early years. We've been focusing on how we can deliver even more teacher training and development. Of course, that remains the fundamental driver of success in the classroom. One of the we are running our Cambridge Dedicated Teacher Awards, and this year very proud to say that Ms. Khadija from let me just check this Wycherley International School, is she here today? Anybody from Wycherley? Anyway, welcome as one of our globally recognised dedicated teachers and one of the winners from South Asia. So thank you for joining us and congratulations. And that whole award around dedicated teacher recognises the central importance of the teacher in delivering high quality education. So these are the things that we've been focusing on. There's a lot more to come, and I know that we'll be talking a little bit more about that later on. Our work on climate change in education, our Young Pioneers program, which is an enterprise-focused program. These are all things that we are developing and will be launching shortly in Sri Lanka. So I hope that what we can think about is how this community can build and grow, and how we can focus on doing a better job at supporting you here in Sri Lanka. And this is particularly important as we think about the future. As Aaron said, there is no doubt that the forces, the things that are happening around the world of education, have perhaps never been in such a state of change, disruption and challenge as they are currently. Obviously, the pandemic had a massive impact on the way teaching and learning was developed in schools, but actually forces, I think, to really question what the purpose is of education and the social interaction that is actually the essential part of education. But it's not just been that. AI, who could have predicted 2 years ago the impact of AI and technology and the fundamental questions that has forced us to think about in terms of what our role is if AI is able to personalise learning, is able to respond or retrieve information in such an agile way. But it's not just those things. Sometimes those topics dominate. Actually, there's a lot more that young people these days are having to deal with, are having to think about and come to terms with. Climate education, obviously. Existential crisis that our planet faces around climate and sustainability. The geopolitical impact that Aaron referenced as well. What's going on in the world? What is happening around the whole concept of the Sometimes the narrative we hear when we go around the world is one of ambiguity, of doubt. Often when I speak to teachers and schools around the world, significant questions. Well, what does this mean for education? What does this mean for the school? What does this mean for the role of the school, the role of the teacher? Actually, fundamentally, the findings of this report mean that actually, in a world where all of these things are happening, where these changes are happening, where these challenges are being presented to our young people, the role of the school and the teacher has never been more important. As I go through these findings, I hope that it will become clear why that is the case. In a world that is being impacted in the way I've described, the skills that young people require, as well as the subject knowledge they need to have, need to change and need to adapt. Interestingly, when people have been talking a lot about 21st century skills for a while, creativity, innovation, problem solving, actually, there are some new skills that are going to be fundamental to what young people need as they enter the world. The first of these is actually around the issues of self-management. When you think about it, the number of things that are impacting young people, the distractions, the alternatives that young people are faced with today, actually the ability to manage their own time, their own focus, their study skills, their interaction and social skills, the ability to manage themselves becomes one of the most important skills that young people will need for the future. But what's interesting is that whilst this has been recognized as being important, and by the way, young people recognize this as well. Sometimes we think it's just adults and teachers that are pointing out how much young people are on their screens these days or how many distractions. Actually, this was a theme that came very, very strongly from learners themselves. And once they recognized that it was important, 23% of them recognized that it was the most difficult thing to learn, the most difficult thing to develop. And for teachers, 20% the most difficult thing to develop. But if we really are preparing for young people for the future, what are we doing to be explicit about this? What are we doing to be able to actually embed this into their teaching and learning experience? The second key finding from the report, is that actually fewer than half the young people we spoke to, fewer than half of the students feel fully prepared for their next step in education. 48% only across our whole community of schools felt completely prepared for their next step in education. Now, that's probably always been a little bit true when you talk to students about their time at school, but actually that number has been significantly reducing. Interestingly, teachers don't feel quite so pessimistic about that. Some 2/3 feel that actually the students that are coming out of schools, and by the way, it wasn't just Cambridge schools we spoke to hundreds of other schools, IB schools, other international board schools, local and national curriculum schools as well. But actually 2/3 of teachers did feel that actually what they were doing was helping them be ready. Now, what does that mean? Are the students right? Are the teachers right? And even teachers who have that doubt that maybe they're doing the job that they want, what are the kinds of things that they feel that they're not doing in terms of preparing them well for the future? And I think that's incredibly important dialogue and conversation that we need to continue. Because one of the other big findings from this is how important the student voice is going forward. If they feel that they are not getting what they need entirely from education, we have to listen to that as well. But despite all of that, actually, there was an overwhelming sense that there are some things that remain very important. Subject knowledge. Subject knowledge remains essential for progression through education. And sometimes I think this is slightly underplayed when we think about the debate that's going on about education at the moment. People move straight to skills as being the things that we have to develop, but actually that fundamental underpinning subject knowledge remains absolutely essential. And why is that? If all you're doing is using technology to retrieve information in the moment, what you're not doing is taking that knowledge, that understanding deep into your long-term memory. You're not internalizing that knowledge. You're not able to retrieve it at a moment's notice, to be able to then apply it and to think creatively using that subject knowledge. You don't want a surgeon, trust me, standing over you with a scalpel and a phone looking up how they're going to do the operation. You don't want a pilot that has an iPad next to them working out what the information is that they need to retrieve. I think the best example I often use is, when I think about this, is when was the last time you used a book of maps? I know that this is decades since I've used a map. My wife and I, we use sat-nav all the time. We have lots of arguments about it, actually. Well, yeah, nice arguments about it. And I cannot tell you, I have lost count of the number of times, and using sat-nav, I have ended up in a dead end, in a junkyard, in a farmyard, working out how on earth I got there because the sat-nav told me. And the point there is about, actually, the danger with technology and AI is it can disempower you rather than empower you if you're not using it in the right way. If you're just using technology to retrieve information when you need it in the moment, but not truly internalizing it, how are you able to really challenge that information, think about that information, decide whether there's bias or what the evidence is? How do you use it creatively to do new things, not just to repeat what's been done before? And I think that's what we need to understand is that whilst all these skills are important, that fundamental subject knowledge in your long-term memory is what will enable you to be able to think creatively and innovatively and to apply that information into the future. So actually, subject knowledge is as important, not information retrieval, but subject knowledge is important as ever before. But then with that subject knowledge, it's what do you do with it? How do you engage with it? How do you engage with other people around your understanding? So actually the next big theme that came out of the report is the importance of those interpersonal skills of communication, of oracy, the ability to be able to apply that information, to collaborate, to be able to communicate with each other, to be able to build consensus, to be able to listen well. There's a wonderful phrase that we use sometimes, which is the ability in this world to be able to disagree agreeably, to disagree well. And to be able to do that, you need to be able to listen. You need to be able to understand other people's points of view. You need to be able to assimilate that and to be able to actually listen and to respond. And that requires the interpersonal skills that are developed in school. Because the truth is, and this is a very significant finding, that actually young people, even at school, talk about one of the things that is a limit to their ability to be able to communicate effectively their own views is a fear of judgment. Actually, that what young people need is a psychologically safe space in which they can develop their skills, their points of view, their communication skills. And I don't think there is a more psychologically unsafe place to develop those skills than online. It's in schools where we develop those abilities to be able to relate with each other, to communicate in a safe space. And that's why schools and teachers and what we do in schools becomes so important. So actually, at the end of the day, 90% of teachers do feel that technology will help them and will help young people. Of course, we can't push back on the impact. We shouldn't do, because actually technology can be an extremely powerful tool to improve the way we access information, where we use information, the way we can personalize things for different learners. But actually we have to do so thoughtfully, within the context of a structured curriculum, within the context of a curriculum in a school environment that encourages not just the use of technology, but the way that we engage with each other. So these are just some of the things that have come out of the report, some of the specific things that have come out of this report. But I hope that what's really clear is that it recognizes that, yes, we do need to think about our schools, our education that we're providing, but it's in schools and with teachers that those skills, that balance, that psychological safety, those skills of interaction and personal development That is what a school brings, and that's what you as teachers do. And that's what we as a community need to work together to share the best practice, to share our experiences, and to ensure that actually in the future, AI and HI, artificial intelligence and human intelligence, grow together to the benefit of young people. So those are the fundamental findings. So what are we going to do about it? Actually, this was a quote from a student from South Asia. As AI gets more popular, more widely available, the need to memorize subject knowledge becomes less important as we can find and implement subject knowledge easily without the use of AI. So what are we doing about it? Well, this is why it's incredibly important that we have meetings like today. But a meeting like today is not just about a conversation that happens and then finishes. It's a conversation that we hope we're creating amongst our community to share these findings, to share these ideas, and to build our community around the world and to build our community in Sri Lanka. Because we know that we together have the answers to this. So, but what are we going to do? Meetings like this, yes. We're also going to be holding each year education summits to bring together world-leading experts, employers, education leaders to continue unpacking the implications of our findings. We're also going to be establishing a permanent student consultative forum. As I sit around my dinner table every night with my 3 sons, I'm a bit nervous about the idea of having 1,000 students talking to me about what we think the future should be. But actually, most meals, there's never something I don't learn. So we'll be establishing a permanent student consultative forum so that their voices, because it's great to listen, but you have to act as well. Otherwise, we will soon lose that trust of young people as well. We're going to be building into our curriculum, and this is where the importance of having a developmental curriculum from early years right the way through to advanced. Where can we build those skills more explicitly in our curriculum? How do those skills get developed from the very earliest stages developmentally right the way through? How can we pull those skills out and make them more explicit so that young people can be clear what are the skills that they're developing? How can we work with higher education so that they recognize that these skills are the skills that come from young people who have taken the Cambridge curriculum? We'll be providing you advice on what's the best combination of subjects to develop those skills. And over time, we will be building those skills, those ways of working into our curriculum. And through our teaching community, we'll be working with you explicitly on how you can really magnify those things in your teaching and learning as well. There is a lot that is in this report. It publishes today. I'm absolutely proud of it. There's a QR code there that you can scan. I would encourage you to read the report. It's about 50-odd pages, so it's all right. It's not massive, but nevertheless, I think there are some very, very profound things in there that I think that you will find interesting. But more importantly, as members of our community, I would encourage you to feed back your thoughts and insights. In the meantime, thank you again for coming here. That is what now that thin, hairy lad has turned into. Please do take the opportunity today to also talk to me. I'd love to talk to as many of you as possible today. It's been a delight to be here back in Sri Lanka. I really look forward to coming back again soon, and I really look forward to listening to many people in this room about some of these issues. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Ladies and gentlemen, can we have another round of applause to Mr. Rod Smith for that inspiring address and for reinforcing Cambridge's global commitment. With that, this morning, it's now time to hear a few words from the British High Commissioner to Sri Lanka, His Excellency Andrew Patrick. And ladies and gentlemen, in introducing him, he joined the UK Foreign and Commonwealth Office in the year 1989, and his diplomatic career has taken him through Afghanistan, South Africa, and Myanmar, where he served as ambassador from 2013 to 2018.
Most recently, he was the UK's envoy on migration and modern slavery. Today, he continues to strengthen the relationship between UK and Sri Lanka with education as one of the most important bridges of cooperation. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together as I cordially invite His Excellency Andrew Patrick to address the gathering.
Well, thank you very much, Rod, Aaron, colleagues from Cambridge, colleagues from the British Council, colleagues from the education sector in Sri Lanka. It's a great honor to be here and to talk to you briefly. It's an honor because I think there are two reasons why I'm very optimistic about the future of this country. One of them is your geographical location, which you didn't do much about. That's given. But you are in a part of the world that is destined to grow, if economists are right. It's going to be one of the areas of the world that is going to grow fastest over the next few decades. That's a given. The thing that also makes me optimistic about this country is the thirst for education in this country, and which is represented in this room. And I'm very proud that the UK is able to play a key part in that. If you talk to some older Sri Lankans and you talk about the educational relationship with the UK, they will think about people going to university in the UK, and they will talk about English language teaching and English skills. And the truth is, those are still very important parts of the relationship. But over the previous decades, it has expanded enormously. English is still a main part, but it is now a relationship which covers a vast number of subject areas. The British Council still does its work on English, but it now offers exams in a wide range of subjects as well. And we've seen partners like Cambridge and others from the UK grow here and broaden their offer. So it's great that you are enhancing your presence here in Sri Lanka. So the relationship today is actually more about things that happen in Sri Lanka than things that happen in the UK. Transnational education, that's British universities working with Sri Lankan partners, has exploded over the past few decades. We now have around 60 to 70,000 undergraduates studying with Sri Lankan institutions, partnering with international universities. About 90% of that is with British universities. And then if you look below that, you have the school level cooperation, acquiring the partnerships with the UK that enable you to deliver the most modern, the most up-to-date education that you can. I recognize there's a debate in this country about the role of private sector education, fee-paying education, versus state sector public education. And that's a debate that exists in all of our countries. I think if you look around the world, the most successful economies are ones which combine both. There is a role for state free education, and there is a role for private sector or fee-paying education. And of course, we are working with the government as they work through some of those issues here in Sri Lanka. But I just wanted to say briefly at the end, what is it Sri Lanka gets out of this relationship? We obviously get something out of this relationship, but what does Sri Lanka get out of this relationship? I think what it gets out of the relationship is connection to institutions in the UK, like Cambridge, that are global institutions, that have their finger on the pulse of global developments in education. We were hearing about the uncertainties that we all face in the future. And I think one of the ways of managing those uncertainties is having those international links, linking into education in groups like Cambridge who have a worldwide picture, who can understand the global developments and help schools and universities in this country to reach those global standards and to adapt to the challenges that are coming in the 21st century. So thank you very much for inviting me. It's a great honor to have the chance to speak. It's wonderful that Cambridge is enhancing its presence here. And thank you for all the work that you are doing jointly with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, His Excellency Andrew Patrick. We truly honor your presence today with us as well. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we are ready to move into the very first panel discussion. Now, the very first panel discussion is on the subject English for Confidence, Competence and Careers. The stage is being set for the panel discussion. Now, as it's being set, let me walk you through. Cambridge English is where your world grows and is the gold standard of English learning, preparing learners of all age groups with holistic skill development. To dive deeper into subject area, our respected leaders from across the education sector who will now share practical strategies and experiences. Ladies and gentlemen, I now take the pleasure of inviting the panelists to take their seats one by one as I cordially invite. I cordially invite Mr. Arun Rajamani, Managing Director, Cambridge University Press and Assessment, South Asia. Let's give a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Oshadi Korala, co-founder, Chief Operating Officer at Express Jobs and CEO at hrnews.lk. Let's give a round of applause. And next, I cordially invite Ms. Vasanthi Stephan, Group Chief Human Resources Officer at Janashakti Group. Next, I cordially invite Ms. Maliti Jayathissa, Director, Coordinating Principal at Leeds International School Network and Leeds Campus of Business and Technology. And our final panelist, Reverend Father Isanka Mihiran, Director, Principal, JPI, to join the panel discussion. And now I cordially invite the moderator, Ms. Ranmali Vikramasinghe, co-founder and lead trainer at Butterfly Effect Training Partner. She will be moderating you through this panel discussion, ladies and gentlemen, with a round of applause. Panel discussion is on English for Confidence, Competence and Careers. Over to you, Ranmali.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to welcome all of you to this panel discussion on a theme that is very close to us. Today, English is the tool that builds confidence, enhances competence, and opens doors to successful careers. For students, it's the bridge between schools and the wider world. And for employers, it's a critical skill that ensures workforce readiness. And for Sri Lanka as a nation, it is a driver of global competitiveness. Today, we are delighted to have with us Mr. Arun Rajamani, Managing Director of Cambridge English Press and Assessment South Asia. And along with him, we have a distinguished panel who will share their experiences and insights. Ms. Vasanthi Stephan, attorney at law and representing Janashakti Group, and she is a human resource officer. Dr. Oshadi Korala, co-founder and chief operating officer at Express Jobs, and Reverend Father Isanka Mihiran, director and principal of St. John Paul II International College. And last but not least, Mrs. Maliti Jayathissa, director, Leeds International School. So together, we will explore how Cambridge English equips learners with the communication skills they need to thrive in the classroom and in their workplaces and in society. So let's dive right in. Our first question is to Mr. Arun Rajamani. Now, you have a truly global perspective. So my first question to you is, How do you see the role of English evolving today, not just as a language, but as a life skill? And how do Cambridge English qualifications support this vision?
Thank you. So I'm going to step back a bit and sort of first share our perspectives as to why do we think English is going to be a very critical skill that is required. Now we heard a lot about geopolitics and what it can do to the time-tested model of mobility. A lot of our students in Sri Lanka, and as is the case with the rest of the region, they've always looked at international education as a gateway for them to look at careers abroad. But with geopolitics coming in, what it's likely to do is to impact mobility significantly. Rod alluded to the fact that there are nationalistic discussions that are going on in every country. And what that could impact is the ability for students to really move across countries. But what it is not likely to do, and this is what the High Commissioner, His Excellency, that he said, that we are in a region that's going to be one of the key regions that will be the talent basket for the world. And if that's the situation that we're going to look at, we're staring at a case where there might be the workforce based in Sri Lanka, but really doing global jobs. And one of the key things that will link the ability for them to perform the roles would be the mastery of communication, and that's likely to be English, which is going to be a business skill and a language that links businesses together. So we should realize that this is going to be one of the key areas for students to master as a skill in order for them to have a successful professional career ahead. So as we see the role evolve, we realize that a lot of our students in our regions who come into the workforce are not necessarily privileged enough to learn English as a skill in addition to the language that they learn in school to acquire that mastery before they get into the workforce. So therefore, they need to look at acquiring those skills at a short span of time while they are in higher education institutions and for them to be ready for the workforce. So that's how we see the evolution of that. For us, I think our research tells us that if there is a student who has mastery of English and from a communication skill standpoint, that person has a 2x probability of getting a job, which means twice the probability of getting a job compared to a person who does not have mastery of English. And the second is that the pay that they are likely to get is about 1.5 times more than someone who does not have the language proficiency. So not only therefore does it make it compelling for them to get a job, but they also get a higher paying job, which signals their ability to be successful in global careers going forward. So the evolution that we see is the requirement for English to be embedded as a skill to be learned right through school before for them to be successful to have a global career going forward.
Thank you, Arun. And from what he said, we understand that yes, we have things like geopolitics and many issues may be coming up, but this could be a competitive advantage if we use English correctly to empower our students. So thank you very much, Arun. So let me now move on to Vasanti, Stephen. Now you have an HR background. So from an HR standpoint, what key competencies are employers looking for in the modern workplace, and where does English fit into that picture?
Thank you for having me, Ranmali. Yes, there are so many competencies we look at, be it technical, behavioral, leadership competencies that we are looking at. But so the technical competencies are quite what we want to perform a job role. But in terms of soft skills, you have these collaboration skills, digital influence skills, emotional intelligence, what said and what not, everything is like a competency these days. But English is kind of the common competency that stands out. So it's quite universal, globally, locally, both. Like Arun said, it's essential at the entrant level, and plus in an organization, if you want to build a career, it's paramount that you have your language skills for you to perform. So that will say, like, your proficiency in the English language will say whether you will be stuck in a technical role or whether you will be stepping into leadership roles. So that there's a demarcation, a clear demarcation with regard to the English language that will define your career. So in terms of the competencies, like it's very understood, but with what I said, it's universal and it's essential. Just stepping out from the topic a bit, our majority is Sinhala speaking in our country. That's a very difficult language to learn. I myself, for the inquisitive of it, learned in Sinhala. There were 3 alphabets, 51, 160, 130, numbers coming in. It's the most difficult language to learn. If we can learn that, I really can't understand why we can't learn alphabet of 26 letters. It's just that enthusiasm, the importance, and the courage and the support system needs to work in at all levels for us to really get that.
Thank you, Vasanthi. And she brought out something that's really interesting. When it comes to recruitment, English is required at the entry level, but it doesn't stop there. It'll help you reach leadership positions as well. And with language, Vasanthi, like you said, you need the support. It is simple language, or people might say it's very easy to learn, but I think the right support is something that we need, and that's something Cambridge can give us at this point. So from a employer's lens, let's move on to a recruiter's point of view. Dr. Oshadi, you are the co-founder and chief operating officer at Express Jobs. So basically you are in the front line when it comes to hiring young talent. So from your experience as a recruiter, how important is English throughout the hiring process, from writing a CV to facing interviews, especially today when candidates have access to AI tools and technology? What are your thoughts?
Good morning. Good morning to everybody, and thank you for having me, Ranmali. So I'll start with giving you guys a bit of stats, right, for you to understand where English stands as a language in Sri Lanka. So I read up a bit before I came here, and out of 116 countries, we ranked 73rd for English language communication skills, right? And out of 60% of the students who enter the universities in Sri Lanka, 60% struggles with English communication, grammar skills, and reading and writing. So that's really bad place to be, because we are lagging behind our competitors like Malaysia and India. Sorry, I have a couple of Indians here, but we are Sri Lanka, and I'm trying to get Sri Lanka to the next stage. So in terms of, these communication skills, reading, writing skills come really handy, because you asked me about the CVs. So CV is the first thing any recruiter sees when you apply to a job, and they generally take 30 seconds. They look at it, and if they feel like you've communicated correctly, you can have all the education skills, but if you're not very good at selling yourself, because CV is something like a sales pitch. That's like marketing yourself. And if you don't market it in the right language, you are not going to even be shortlisted for an interview. And nowadays, 80% of the companies, I work with 10,000 clients, Express Jobs has 10,000 clients. I see all their data. And 80% of them use application tracking systems. What that means is your CV is first speaking to an ATS or an AI. And if you don't have the right way of presenting your data in English, because they are looking at your CV in English, you are not going to get even shortlisted, because they are trying to get the cream of the crop. So having the right way of expressing yourself in the language, it really matters, even to get that stage. So now if you look at AI nowadays, we have companies even in Sri Lanka who does AI interviews. And AI interviews are done in such a way that AI basically calls you. That's the first stage of interviews. It's not even in person anymore. And the AI is going to say, hi, I'm so-and-so from ABC company. I'm the AI of ABC company. I'd like to see whether you have a bit of time to talk to me. And that's going to be in English. If your pronunciation skills and your communication skills, and if you are not selling yourself in the right way, and that's mainly down to English language, chances of you getting an in-person interview is quite less. So this is something we have to go back and tell our students how important it is to get yourself like master of English, because that comes in handy. And sometimes when you're working with international clients or international industries, they are mainly working with the English language. So like previous panelists said, your career progression completely relies on how well you can communicate.
Oshadi, you spoke about some emerging industries. Could you give us some examples? I'm sure the audience would be
Sure. So
interested.
because we are talking about English as a language, there was a research done with SLASCOM and British Council, and they mainly did the research in IT and BPO sector. They found out that it was one of the key competencies, key skills that they were looking at. And if you look at tourism, and we send a lot of caregivers to European countries, and the reason for them to pick somebody from a different country and ours was down to English communication skills. It wasn't the education, it was the language. So if you look at tourism, KPO, BPO, IT, because you're mainly working with international clients, English is a must. And this is something we have to tell our students.
Thank you. Oshi, that was, thank you for sharing this, because it's a real eye-opener for all of us, principals, teachers, because the landscape is changing. We are looking at different ways of recruitment, and how do we make our students shine, and how do they use English to really sell themselves is what we need to understand, and how Cambridge can help perhaps is what we need to understand. So thank you for sharing that. So Oshadi, now you spoke about recruitment, and now let's look at the education sector, because learning really starts there. That's where we see the foundation. So we're fortunate to have with us Reverend Father Ishankar Mihran, Director and Principal of St. John Paul II International College, who has made it his mission to take Cambridge across the island. So, Father Ishankar, could you share your journey so far with us? Tell us a little bit about the types of schools you worked with and how you've implemented Cambridge English in these schools.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for having me. Actually, normally, GPI has Cambridge Authorized Exam Center. We work with different types of schools. We work with government, semi-government schools, and private schools where they deliver international education and also local curriculum. So to begin with, I remember we had a visit to Jaffna province, and you were also part of that. And we started our Cambridge English program in Jaffna. And to be honest, the students there, they are less privileged. But the passion of the principal, was able to get this program through. And then, when we work with the government school, there are lots of restrictions. It's not easy to have a program like, Cambridge English, and there are, financial restrictions as well. And what we introduced there to Jaffna College is mapping system. And we are thankful to Ms. Uma and Kevin for introducing that mapping system. And without any cost, the students, in fact, they didn't want to have a textbook because we introduced a mapping system, and the teachers were trained, and then the teachers taught children Cambridge, English. If I elaborate a little on mapping system. Uma, she mapped Sri Lankan textbooks to that of Cambridge English. So starting with grade 3. So we started the program from grade 3 in Jaffna College, and we were also fortunate to have the exam, the first batch of students, and we on to the second batch as well. So when we work with government schools, we always go with mapping system where children don't have to even buy a textbooks, because it's very difficult for a principal to ask students to buy a textbook in a government school given the financial restrictions. But when we work with semi-government schools and private schools, they have liberty and they can introduce a Cambridge English textbook. And many of the schools we are working with, let it be from, Novarelia district, or Kalutara, Colombo, and Putlam, from where I'm coming from. And they recommend a textbook, Cambridge English textbook. And some of these schools, they have extended the number of periods of English, given the importance, we are talking about it today. And they have extended the number of periods, and also have integrated Cambridge English textbook to that of, their local curriculum. And they, without having extra classes during, weekends or in the evening, some schools have been able to complete Cambridge English curriculum from starters to FCE. And some of the schools, they have initiated with our help from JPI, Cambridge English language academies, and they run the program as an external program in the evening, or perhaps they have classes during weekends. So we have seen schools doing very well. It could be, government schools, semi-government, or fully private.
Thank you. Thank you, Father Isanka. What he said was really interesting, because Cambridge English can be implemented in many ways. It could be, you can map it to the school curriculum. You can have your afternoon classes, or you can also maybe set up a separate language arm for your school or your institute. And with his work across the island, you will be able to see examples of those different ways of implementing it, because he believed in Cambridge English and he decided to take it to and spread the message across the island. So thank you, Father Isanka. Let me now talk to Mrs. Malithi Jayathis, Director, Leeds International School. Now, she has brought this vision into her own school and implemented Cambridge English into their school curriculum. Malithi, you've implemented Cambridge English into your school curriculum, and how has it changed teaching and learning in your school?
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for having me too. And so my conversation actually will be a good flow from Father Isanka, because like Father Isanka said, I think I'll be reaching out to most of the educationists in the room, the school leaders mostly, because we heard from the employers the importance of English, and from all the speakers of the prominence of the language nowadays compared to the past. And as school leaders, I think we have a greater responsibility in ensuring that our learners are ready when they step in to the higher education sector or the workforce, that they are capable of working par to par with anyone else in the world. So we have actually been partnered with Cambridge English Qualification since 2001, where we have been offering the Cambridge English courses to learners out of school hours and preparing them for the Cambridge English exams. So once we became an authorized exam center in 2008, 21, I think, with the exposure into the offerings that were available, we actually felt that we could integrate these Cambridge English levels into our school curriculum itself, where our students did not need to pay more to prepare for the Cambridge English examinations, and simply with the school learnings that they were getting, they could also be preparing for the same exams. And why we like the Cambridge English qualifications coming into the school curriculum is it gave a very good structured progression to assess their skill development in English, because they do learn a lot of English starting from nursery to A levels, but until they face their O-level exams, they don't really get that assessment of where my English standing is in comparison to others. So with this framework now, starting from grade 2, that's where they go for the starters examination, and then up to grade 7, they were prepared for the PET examination. So with the results, our first batch went into the examinations in July. What we have felt is with the performance of our students, we can definitely prepare our students up to the FCE level by grade 8 with the school curriculum that we offer. So there again, like Father said, our students don't buy separate textbooks to prepare for the Cambridge examinations. They follow the same curriculum that they've been following. And I take this opportunity to thank Ms. Uma and Mr. Kevin for the wonderful support they've given in mapping the Cambridge English framework to our school curriculum, so that we didn't have to change the books, the schemes of works, papers. We simply kind of pay more emphasis now on also the listening, speaking skills more than we used to do earlier. And our assessment structure has changed a bit, where earlier it was a written paper where it was predominantly testing the reading and the writing skills, where now students also go through a speaking test and a listening test every term. So with that preparation, without difficulty, they are confident of what their capabilities are. And actually, in terms of all the other assessments, I think they face the Cambridge English exams with more fun and enthusiasm, where it doesn't feel much like an exam. So that is kind of, I think, the integration of that into the schools.
Thank you, Maliti. That is truly inspiring. And I think you might be the best person to answer this question. How do teachers and parents respond to Cambridge English as part of the curriculum? The key stakeholders, I believe.
Okay, around 1.5 years ago, I think the teachers were not very enthusiastic about it because they were not sure. It was like another new addition coming into it. But we started off again with a whole training program that really kind of boosted their confidence and supported their professional development as well. And once they started doing the second practice test, because we did one test, there they got more confidence. Teachers also gained confidence. Learners also gained the necessary confidence. And by the second one, teachers actually enjoyed, because they actually saw learners who don't normally speak out. They were responding, they were improving, and even the listening skills part, they were enjoying those activities. So that English language became more engaging and more active than it used to be before.
Thank you.
So I think all were okay. And parents actually like that international validity of the certificate. So it was very well received, I think.
Thank you, Maliti. That was, again, truly inspiring, and congratulations on implementing in Cambridge English in your schools, Father and Maliti. So to wrap up, I'd like to turn back to Arun, because just to understand from his perspective what the way forward is. So you've heard perspectives from the corporate sector and from the education sector. You've heard ideas from employers, recruiters, and principals. So looking ahead, how do you see Cambridge English partnering with schools, institutions, and employers in Sri Lanka to help learners become truly future ready?
Thank you. And I think a lot of what I would like to say has already been said by all the eminent members of the panel here. So I might just want to summarize everything that we've heard so far. First and foremost is what level of proficiency should a student have in order for them to get a job? I think what we've learned from the various engagements that we've had with the corporate sector is that for most roles, a proficiency level of B2 or C1 would be most ideal if they were to look at a global role. For those of you who don't understand what B2 or C1 means, the way to benchmark proficiency and to measure that is on what we call as a CFR scale, the Common European Framework for Reference. Any language in the world can be broken down using a CFR framework across 6 levels: A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2. A1 is the most basic and C2 is the most advanced. It does not mean C2, one needs to be a literary expert. C2 would, in our parlance that we would understand, would be an equivalent of an IELTS band score of 9, and A1 would be at a very basic proficiency. So to get a job, it's important to be either at a B2 or a C1. So our mission is to see how could we progress students from A1 when they are in early years, right up to B2 or a C1 by the time they get down to an A levels. So if that is the mission that we want, that's a target that we should aspire for that can help them get a job. The second part, I think what we heard is if English proficiency could be a great equalizer, we also have to understand that the students who come into the programs are the ones who have a great deal of diversity. There are students who come from privileged backgrounds whose proficiency level, which is age appropriate and grade appropriate, could be either on par or better than what is expected. And there are several students who will come into the classroom who are not at that proficiency. So the basic ingredients of the Cambridge English Qualification Program is that we will have a very personalized way to attend or to look at addressing the needs of children who need more development. And for that, it starts with a diagnostic test that helps us understand where is the student on the CFR scale. If a student is at A2 but needs to be at B1, that student would need extra attention to ensure that they're able to move forward. And I think Dr. Oshade mentioned this, that the most number of issues that we see is with speaking skills. They might be excellent at writing because they all learn English as a subject in your classroom. So they might be excellent in writing, they might be excellent in reading, but when it comes down to speaking, that's when most of them falter. So to identify what are the specific skills that need intervention and what is the level to which they need to go to can be a great deal of advantage if you're able to personalize the intervention. So that's the second principle that we ought to look at. The third principle is continuous assessments. Every year, after the program is done, if you're able to assess where they are, it motivates a child to keep learning more and more. So nothing like recognizing success, showing them where they are, and to celebrate that. The more we do that, the more students will be encouraged to go forward to learn. So very simple principles is if we could blend the classroom learning for the subject alongside the need to learn the skills, ensure that we're able to offer personalized interventions by doing diagnostic tests, and by celebrating success and measuring outcomes progressively, I think this can be the way forward. And the Cambridge English Qualifications Program is designed around this, with tests which are very accurate, learning materials which are very appropriate, and ensuring that teachers have the skills they need to teach these skills in the classroom by providing the assistance that Dr. Malati just said, that if we can map curriculum needs back to the skill needs, that makes the job and the life of the teacher a lot easier. So that's what we attempt to do from a Cambridge perspective.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Arun. So what we heard today is very clear. English is not just about learning a language, but it's about building confidence and unlocking your opportunities in the world. And here, Cambridge English Qualification is the support we can give our students to recognize and celebrate their success in this journey. So thank you very much, Arun Rajmani, Vasanthi Stephen, Dr. Oshade